Hello, nerds for Yang. This week, I'm going to do a shorter version because last week's video was like 30 minutes and we got feedback from one viewer saying, hey, those are a little on the long side. So let me know if this shorter version is more valuable to you or if you want more detail in the comments below. And I upload a new Andrew Yang related video every week, so if this is of interest, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends because that helps me make sure that these videos are worth doing and I should keep doing them. So this week we're going to talk about something that a lot of people are wondering, which is like, can this guy really do it? Like, do we have any data to suggest that Andrew Yang is more than, you know, just kind of a flash in the pan, like a one-issue candidate? So in the spirit of the nerd-like approach, let's look at data, which I think would be consistent with what Andrew might do as well. So the first thing I wanted to do was I did a little quick analysis of how Yang is doing relative to other candidates that are polling in national polls comparably, but how he's doing on social. So specifically, here we're going to look at Andrew Yang versus Julian Castro and Amy Klobuchar. Julian Castro is a former Secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Amy Klobuchar is a U.S. Senator from Minnesota. So both Klobuchar and Castro already had kind of like a national platform, the U.S. Senate and the Obama administration. So you could argue that, wow, you know, Yang's a little bit of an underdog. But let's look at the Twitter followership, and assuming that Twitter is probably the most kind of political social media platform that we should look at. And let's first look at total followers. And you can see, you know, if you go way back to let's say 2017, even early 2018, no question, Klobuchar being a U.S. Senator, Castro being Obama administration secretary, way more presence than Yang. Obviously, if you fast forward to, let's say, March of 2019, what you see here is a very rapid upward trajectory for Yang. This is mostly driven, I think, by the Joe Rogan podcast interview, but it's really kind of kept pace since then. And so if you go to today, which is March 30th, 2019, you'll notice that he has already exceeded Castro. So Castro right now has 195,000 followers, and as of this taping, Yang has 207,000 followers. Big momentous date. I think it looks like around the change happened on March 24th when Yang pulled ahead of Castro. So you could argue that's a really exciting development. Klobuchar's been growing nicely, but not quite at the same rate. And here you can see the daily new followers for each of the candidates, and clearly that red line shows Yang is adding more followers per day than both Castro and Klobuchar. So if you kind of expand that to in perpetuity, you'll see that Yang is projected to exceed Klobuchar, specifically probably around July of this year. If he can keep it up, he'll pass Klobuchar. So right away you're like, whoa, this is a guy that came out of nowhere, didn't have a national platform, is not a sitting U.S. Senator, was not a Secretary of anything for the Obama administration, and he's already passing. You know, specifically Castro was kind of like a hot ticket item. He was someone that Hillary was rumored to be thinking about him for a running mate, and people have been talking about him for a long time. So TLDR on this one, when you compare Yang's Twitter kind of activity and followership to a sitting U.S. Senator and a former Secretary of HUD, you'll see clear bet would be you'd want to bet on Yang. Next, we look at Yang versus the two hot kind of rising stars on social media for the Democratic primary. And so we got to look at Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke. And then you kind of see like, okay, well, within this class, maybe Yang isn't the clear leader. So you look at Twitter followers. Obviously, again, before January of 19, Yang is like barely registering. You see Beto having ran a major U.S. Senate campaign against Ted Cruz and almost beating him, being quite the darling of the media. And then Pete Buttigieg, really kind of like Yang, not super well known until quite recently, and he's just been kind of on a tear. I think that might have been mostly from he had a hour-long town hall on CNN, so that was shown nationally, and Yang has not had that treatment from CNN. So if you know someone that works at CNN, or if you are at CNN, you guys should seriously consider giving Yang a chance, because even though he hasn't had the CNN town hall, he's still quite comparable to Buttigieg. I mean, at least, in the same order of magnitude. Pete Buttigieg now has 600,000 followers, Yang has 200,000, and then of course Beto has 1.3 million. If you look at the daily new followers, you'll see Buttigieg is just killing it. Beto actually is not adding quite as many per day as, let's see, it looks like on March 28th, Yang added 2,000, Buttigieg added 36,000, and Beto added about 2,000. So Beto and Yang are actually growing at the same rate. Buttigieg is just like exploding off the blocks. And then if you sort of look at the projection based on their recent growth rate, you'll notice that, interestingly enough, Buttigieg, if he keeps it up, he should be able to pass Beto around in July, and Yang at the current rate would still be third to Buttigieg and Beto, although it looks like if you go out to when the election would be, let's say 2020, November of 2020, it would end up with Yang around 3 million, Beto at 4.4, and Buttigieg at almost 10 million. So clearly Buttigieg is kind of the hot hand right now. Next comparison on Twitter is, well, how does Yang compare to the incumbents, sort of the leaders in the national polling, not Twitter? So if you look on national polling, clearly Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are the two kind of 800-pound gorillas in this race. On social, on Twitter, they're also really strong. Biden has 3.4 million today. Sanders has 8.3 million, and again, Yang has 200,000. If you look at how much they're adding per day, the last few days, around March 28th, Yang added 2,000, Biden added 1,500, Sanders added 853. So Yang is adding more per day than Biden and Sanders, but obviously he's got a lot of ground to cover. In fact, at the current growth rate, Yang will not surpass Biden and Sanders. So even by 2020, so he would need Yang would need another major surge. I would argue that the Joe Rogan podcast is great. A lot of people I know don't listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, so you could argue that what what will be the real test is when Yang gets some national traditional media like CNN. He has been on Fox News and MSNBC, but not on their big primetime shows. So we'll see how that goes. Lastly, you may be thinking to yourself, oh well, Twitter followers are great, but maybe that's not representative of who actually votes. So I did look at newspaper based polling by kind of the traditional polling companies. And what's most interesting here is if you look at Yang, really until March, Yang has never had even 1% of support when Democrats have been polled nationally. He just doesn't come up. So the first time he actually even shows up is March 1st, where he gets 1%. And that was to the leaders Biden and Sanders with 28 and 25 respectively. And that was in the Monmouth poll. But what's exciting is, and then you have subsequent polls by Morning Consult and CNN, no Yang, less than 1%. But then in March 17th, you see him showing up again with 1% in Emerson. March 17th, another poll by Fox News showing 1%. And then most interestingly, March 25th, by the Harvard poll, he's coming up at 2%. So he's pulled ahead of Castro, Hickenlooper, Gillibrand, Jay Inslee, and he's tied in the Harvard poll with Buttigieg. And, Booker and Warren are 3 and 5%, respectively. So that's pretty exciting with this last Harvard-Harris poll. And if you're wondering, well, can I really believe this Harvard-Harris poll? Looks like they polled between March 25th and 26th, 1,437 registered voters. It reflects a nationally representative sample. Rates were weighted for age within gender, region, race, marital status, a whole number of factors. So I would argue that that's a pretty legit poll. It's being referenced in major media. It's the first one where he's coming up with this 2% milestone. Let's see if subsequent polls he keeps it up or can grow it even beyond that. But super exciting. So in summary, if you're wondering wow, yeah, I see a lot of excitement about Yang, but is it translating into real traction? Certainly on Twitter, as it relates to people that he's polling closest to, for sure he's expected to exceed Castro and Klobuchar, and he's got them pretty well covered in terms of the social traction. He's not in the same league as Buttigieg and Beto right now, but Buttigieg and Beto have had a ton of national media coverage. Yang has not. So then the question is, will he get it? And he's definitely has a way lot of ground to cover to catch up to Biden and Sanders. But with the latest national polls going from not showing up at all to then barely getting 1% in early March to now getting the 2% in late March, certainly encouraging. One last thing is this Sunday, there's going to be a financing announcement from all the campaigns, and if Yang exceeds expectations on how much money he raises, where you can, by the way, you can donate at yang2020.com, that would again raise his profile. And then, of course, we need to see how he does in the June debates. But in summary, I'm super encouraged. I do think the big one is how can we get this guy on CNN? So if you want, I will put some links below in terms of people that are producers at CNN that we can tweet at and that you can tweet at and say, hey, when is Yang getting a town hall? that would be awesome. And hopefully if you subscribe to this channel, I can provide updates like this, from time to time. I'm going to do a new video probably every week. I don't know if I'll do a new one just on polling, but let me know in the comments below if there's stuff you're interested in that I can cover in the future. In the meantime, keep it real, and let's see if the old Yangster can make it all the way.